So how do you make sure that they are doing those things in between the sessions? So you go through the first three sessions, and then every quarter, I guess, because I'm sure that you've probably seen a lot of excuses where I just don't have time. We've been busy, all that kind of stuff. We're growing so much. How do you kind of fight through that to make sure that they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing?
Um, I send emails just as nudges. Now I don't know how many of them actually get read, but I send emails. I have check-in calls, one or two between each session, um, each quarter. And then I'm available anytime people want to talk. So I'm at their disposal. Now, I'm forcing it on them a couple of times a quarter, and then I'm at their disposal other times. And usually that works. Now, if I find out, if we get in session and people aren't getting their rocks done, they're not doing the work, then we might have to turn that up some. But ultimately, it's their decision, right? I'm there if they want help. But other than a couple of check-ins, I'm not going to force myself on them.
What would you say is the piece of EOS that company or owners resist the most, and what breakthroughs have you seen, or what breakthroughs typically happen when they finally embrace that thing, whatever that thing is?
Probably two things. One is taking all of the EOS tools through every level of the organization. And depending on the size of the business, it's not as hard. 30-person organization, not that big a deal. 200-person organization, the idea of taking rocks and measurables and level 10 meetings all the way to the people that are at the ground level of the organization, to a lot of owners seems like that's silly. And what's really in the back of their minds, and I was the worst of the worst, so I don't mean this too critically, is they think those people don't care. And the fact is they do. Yeah. They care. They care about the vision. They care where the company's going, and they would like to have the tools that make them more effective. So that, when they feel like, hey, I can't take the tools to the very lowest level organization, that hinders the effectiveness of the implementation. Now, every once in a while, I'll come across an owner that what's really in his or her mind, and this is usually the men, okay, not to be sexist, but it's usually the men, and it's usually in trades or construction, that don't want to take it down to the next level because they prefer to be one of the guys. I don't want to bring the business stuff down to the next level, because I'd rather go out and be one of the guys and not bring the corporate stuff, so to speak. Yeah. That we got to fix. That's a killer. So either way, that's not getting the tools down the lowest level organization. The second thing is the process component of EOS. And look, I don't think anybody became an entrepreneur so they could document processes. Like, I don't think anybody likes it. I mean, there's somebody that likes it, but people resist that because it feels so bureaucratic. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if we get that done, and if we can ever get them to do it, whenever they go to sell their business, they'll thank us for it, because it could mean a zero.
Yeah. Do you work with any professional services firms at all?
Yeah, a lot.
Do you see any differences between those types of companies and then like non-professional services companies?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And some of it is the way we need to set them up. Professional service firms tend to be more of what I call business unit focus. So you take a construction company that has, let's just say they have sales and marketing, operations, finance, maybe safety. They've got 4 seats or so, and those run the functions. An engineering firm isn't necessarily going to have that. They might have sales and marketing, but then they might have a civil business unit and a wastewater business unit, and 3 or 4 business units that need to operate as profit centers. So we need to set their accountability charts up differently. Think about the way we treat them a lot differently. Yeah. The other thing is with that, then we have to make sure that we're teaching each of those profit center owners almost act like an integrator in a sense. They have their own little business unit. So it's just a little different approach.
That's interesting. That's that adds a layer of complexity that it can make it, I'm sure, challenging to run EOS.
It can, but it's to me the funnest part about EOS is using it. You'll hear implementers talk about using EOS purely. Think of it as a recipe, and if you change an ingredient, it's going to make the recipe not as good.
Right.
On the other hand, if one of those ingredients doesn't work for you, and we just try to force it on you, that's not going to work for you either. So what we got to do is make the system fit you without weakening the system. And that's the really fun part.
So is that, I guess, for companies that have multiple niches, I guess, is that how you would do that as well? You have like an integrator for each niche?
It's not technically an integrator.
Okay.
Right. But in a sense, that's a role that person needs to be able to fill. So if you have you could take the engineering firm, or you could take I've got a financial planning client, that's now graduated, that has offices in multiple cities. Each of those cities is kind of a standalone business unit. So that the person that leads that, let's call him the general manager. He or she needs to be able to run sales, ops, and even maybe a little bit of finance for that business unit. Now, we'll try to pull as much as we can to the centralized level. It ends up being more of a shared services format, where my finance and HR centrally, sales, ops, and that might be it. Maybe a little compliance at each office.
Yeah.